What is one aspect of society that made people be so superficial today? Well, a lot of people were expecting, well, for this question, they were expecting at a small, simple answer like movies and probably, why not even video games. That is a correct answer, but it is the continuation of the past. See, for the longest time, people have been illiterate. The masses have been illiterate irrespective of society because the ones in charge knew that if the people become knowledgeable, if the people learn, they will realize that they do not need leaders, yes, or better said, bosses, because, well, there's a difference in between. When it comes to the later times, these ones of technology, indeed, movies and video games also have made people less starving for detail, yes, and everything in many movies and especially in video games is based off of your logic and off of knowing certain things and on the fact that your mind automatically fills in the details. Imagine all those movies back in the times, the noir movies, with detectives and people killing one another and mafia bosses and the such. Well, very rarely was there a scene that was more explicit, aka a head popping or, someone being chainsawed to death, like literally depicted within the movie. Obviously, all of that was nothing but a fake, yes, but it was designed in such a way that it would almost convince you, if not in the case of primitive minded people, enthrall them under the idea that everything that happens in front of them is actually, pretty true. Yes? The same way your imagination also functions. Your mind can create you vivid images and mini movies, and some of them can actually be very convincingly real. And that is a problem that I say. It is actually a big problem when it comes to simple minded people because not having filters, it is hard for them to distinguish in between imagination and reality. Yes? A lot of people imagine things and end up thinking that they are some kind of prophets, that some kind of overpowerful creature has chosen them to be some kind of relay of that creature's messages. Yes? So, movies can make people throughout the generations be less starved for details because, as opposed to reading the book, the movie presents you someone, well, the directors, and version. Yes, a group of people have come up with a certain idea, they wrote a script, they hired the right actors, they used the right sounds, obviously, because it has a profound psychological influence, and obviously the special effects that would obviously give the viewer the impression that, or as much of an impression, that whatever is going on in that sequence of images is actually a movie and actually would be as real as possible. And with movies, well, everything was based on the idea of you knowing what would happen. Yes? If you heard the click of a gun and, well, you'd see the actor pull the trigger, most people would probably not even take into account the fact that, there is no, in many of those movies, there wasn't even any animation for the pistol being fired, or, well, probably they were dumb enough to not even show that the pistol actually had a recoil. Yes? So many of these little details would be easily observed by me and my analytical mind, but for the people who are just stuck in consumer mode, it is just a test of imagination. Yes? They love imagining all the juicy details because, it portrays a safe world. In that movie, they are shocked by the fact that someone was killed, well, obviously in the movie, or that someone was betrayed, or this and that. But nothing is real. They only like this exercise that they practice their memory, they practice their mind. Yes? When I was young, my pantheistic mind could not comprehend movies. It was something beyond my way of functioning. It was something that required me to be entrenched in certain kinds of meanings. Yes. For me, it was I was incapable of realizing why someone would kill someone else, and well, obviously, my pantheistic mind could not distinguish the fact that that was just a fake creation from a obvious, well, reality. That was not a reality, but the point is, when you perceive something and, well, you're a bit more connected to the world than the others and you're not stuck into a consumer mindset, well, you'll probably find it hard to figure out that that is actually something unreal. It is exactly the same way that it functions for animals. You give a cat a documentary about lions, it will probably be afraid. Yes? You show a small dog a movie about big dogs, it might also get afraid. Yes? So people will react based on whatever they perceive in multiple levels, and well, it also depends how entrenched you are in certain concepts, in certain ideas of reality. Because if you are a child and you don't know what a gun is, yes, or how it functions, you're probably not going to realize that someone, well, imitates the idea of being shot and killed in a movie. Or if you don't know what a chainsaw is and how dangerous it is, you might not realize as a child how, someone was actually killed by the chainsaw. Or imagine many of those cartoons where, some of those characters went through some traumatic experiences, but you are not accustomed to that, so you just took it, well, by the images that you saw. You only perceived a bit of sadness because you were never accustomed to it, especially as a child. Then, when you looked at the cartoons as an adult, or at least a more wiser teenager, then you finally started feeling at least a bit of what that psychiatry was about, of what that depression was about. Yes? A lot of cartoons had a lot of messages for children, yes, subliminal messages and the such. Some of them were well made, but on the other hand, many movies felt like a ripoff, especially for me, because they felt like if I do not give them any attention, any meaning, they simply are irrelevant, yes? Because they are supposed to make you think that someone is dying in those movies, or that someone is getting hurt, or that someone is getting a promotion, or something happens in there, yes? And since my mind is not obsessed with giving any bit of attention on most, I can say easily say most external sources, the movie that I see is kind of ends up more or less like just a deconstruction. Yes, a set of images and a set of sounds. When you also look at video games, in many cases, the video game any means, doesn't have any meaning except what you are already accustomed to. Yes, you don't ever die in that game, you just lose the capability to wander around and you just get a goofy looking message on your screen saying that you have died, yes, or game over or something like that. Yes. The more simple minded people are, the more they become complacent in that idea because, yet again, it follows the idea of the simple script. It is a script. It happens, it follows an algorithm, a set of happenings and whatever, just like the movie also happens by a script. Yes? It is something that is preordained to happen, if one may say. And people love, simple minded people love preordained things because they know they will start in point A, they will finish in point B, and they know to a certain extent what they have to do. This means it is the most comfortable of the paths that they can have, yes? And in this, obviously, that comfort becomes dangerous because they entrench more and more within it. But not only that, they become accustomed to it. They become entrenched in it, yes? They become one with it. That is a problem. So movies and video games can actually help people be more complacent, yes, can help them become more silly, more stupid from a certain perspective, because you have to understand many of these movies and video games obviously don't make any sense if you don't give them any sense. You never die in those games, you just know that because, well, you're accustomed to it already. You've been experiencing other games before. You have heard about death from, well, some scientific books, or you've seen it mimed in some other movies, replicated, or something happens from a previous experience. But it's not necessarily a personal experience, yes? For a lot of simple minded people, experiences also don't matter much because if it's not something to truly traumatize them, they will simply forget that. They will simply move on and not even care about it, yes? Only something truly great for them will simply impress them, or if it is traumatizing enough, they will remember it. Yes? Now, that is unfortunate with a lot of people. So, in time, now you can look clearly that there's a lot of agendas and subtleties before the majority of the movies that we have nowadays. And well, it's been somewhat like this for even longer than we would like to admit. But the point is, a lot of people, and this is basically the problem, not necessarily the movies and the video games, a lot of people simply give up on their life. And, well, that opens them up to one single path that they can follow, the path of the consumer. Whatever happens in life, they must consume. They want drama from movies, they want anything, they just want something fast, and they want it like instantly fast. And they want it, already served. They don't want to assume any responsibility or perform any kind of effort. They just want that, yes, instant gratification. That's how, all of these layers, were necessary for social media to exist and exert their influence the way they did. Everything was carefully planned. Everything was carefully, they didn't actually need any careful setup for social media because it was expected that the majority of people being ignorant, they would actually fall for it and they would become slaves of it with such great ease. Why? Because when people give up on themselves, there is one single path that they can follow, the path of the consumer. Yes, they don't produce anything, they don't create anything, they don't leave anything behind, but, well, most likely devastation. They only just wish to consume. And they want it quick, they want it fast, and they want it good. Yes. So, well, this being said, hopefully this video raised a bit of awareness. You are appreciated. Take care, enjoy life, and this being said, Ferenjan Board signing out.